It's Friday, September 27th, 2024, and Fridays are Ask or Tell Me Anything, next on the AM Update. Very, very long day today as I tape this episode. I've done a lot of content today, so my brain is fried. I'm kind of dead inside. So if I start meandering and getting unfocused or starting to talk in a very monotone voice ad nauseum, apologies in advance. Nevertheless, well, thank you again for hanging out with me another week on the AM Updates. It's always my pleasure to hang out with all of you each and every morning. Appreciate each of your support. If you know of anybody who likes or you would think would like the AM Update, please tell them about it. That's how I can grow. Another way you can help me grow is by giving me a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Even if you've given me a review in the past, your continued reviews help me all the more somehow, some way. I'm not sure how. I'd have to ask Apple, and I don't want to, but leaving a 5-star review is helpful. Also, man, thoughts and prayers literally going out to everybody in Florida, especially towards the Panhandle. That is a frightening hurricane that made landfall. Helene. Just some really devastating images coming out of the Sunshine State. So our thoughts and prayers are with everybody affected down there. Just that one looked like it's particularly bad, and just hope everybody is staying safe and staying above water. All right. With that, let's get on to Ask or Tell Me Anything. You asked me any question you wanted, told me anything, any news stories you thought needed covering. And we're going to start with the latter. This is from Let's Find Out, who says this story just dropped regarding Tim Walz. So this is a clip from Alpha News showing somebody named Brian Lazinski, who was appointed by Governor Tim Walz's administration to an ethnic studies working group. And this is what he says. This is the guy appointed by Tim Walz to draft the framework for the ethnic studies program at all Minnesota schools. And they have to offer this per state law. This is the guy, Brian Lazinski, who's crafted that program. Here's what he has to say.
And we're also sometimes lying on ourselves when people say, like, oh, we use critical race theory in school. We don't use critical race theory in school. The first tenet of critical race theory is that the United States as constructed is irreversibly racist. So if the nation state as constructed is irreversibly racist, then it must be done with. It must be overthrown, right? And so we can't be like, oh no, critical race theory is just about telling our stories and divert. It's not about that. It's about overthrow. It's insurgent. And we need to be, I think, more honest with that. And it's funny that they don't understand critical race theory, but they actually tell some truth when they're like, yeah, it is anti-state. You can't be a critical race theorist and be pro-US. Okay, it is an anti-state theory that says the United States needs to be deconstructed, period, right? Like that's, and so I think it's an interesting argument there, and that's why I'm a critical race theorist.
That is Brian Lazinski. That is a man appointed by Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, now VP, Democrat VP hopeful. That is the guy he appointed to draft the framework for the ethnic studies programs at all of Minnesota's schools that have to be taught there by law. Yeah, Tim Walz, I don't think there's any doubt about it at this point. He is just a toxic individual, a communist. He's been to China 30 times. Wouldn't surprise me if there's more afoot when it comes to his Chinese connections. Going to Steve Senny, do you think AI will become weaponized during election seasons to release stories, audio, or pictures intentionally designed to damage campaigns? Outside of those on X, other social media users most likely won't do research and probably just share it on their page. So do I think that AI will become weaponized? Yes, only if it's weaponized against right-wingers. Yep. Otherwise, it's going to be debunked. If it's used as a tool against against the left, that's when it's going to be debunked. That's when people are going to be sent to prison and might already be in California, or at least subjected to lawfare, as the new law says that was just signed by Governor Newsom. But yeah, I absolutely think, I'm surprised it hasn't been weaponized more frequently, but it's only going to be weaponized effectively against the right, because those are the rules. Heads I win, tails you lose. Dr. Griffin says, how much room do you think remains for truly peaceful mass protests or mass non-compliance to improve our society? I guess by softening hearts or getting the attention of normies. Many people hoped they would be effective against masking and lockdowns in 2020. So, I think we'll know more of the answer to that question with the outcome of this election. How much room remains for peaceful mass protests or mass non-compliance. But if what you're talking about is like the trucker convoy in Canada, Canada cracked down hard, furiously, and tyrannically on those truckers that gummed up Ottawa in the middle of winter. But that was also really effective, because it wasn't too long after that all of those provinces started saying, you know what, on second thought, it's time to open back up again. Heck, the premier of Alberta, about a year after the lockdowns were really over, apologized for the lockdowns. So that was effective. A lot of people paid the price, though. So I really don't know. And that's in Canada. They're even further left than we are. So I really don't know what the answer to that question is. I think a better question to ask is, what is the appetite for those who claim the name or claim to uphold the tenets of the good, the true, and the beautiful? How much of an appetite do they have to sacrifice? Like we heard from Marcus Allen yesterday. How much are they willing to sacrifice? That's the better question to ask. Kay Adkins says, my company offers free flu shots to employees and their family members every year. Do you get a flu shot? Regardless of its effectiveness rating, can we still trust that the flu shot is just a flu shot? Starting with that last question first, no, you can't trust that the flu shot is just a flu shot. And the other question, do I get a flu? I've never gotten a flu shot before, and I wouldn't recommend, maybe if you're elderly and you had a way of knowing for sure that it was just a flu shot, sure, I guess, but most of us you just need to ride it out. And, I had the flu earlier this year for the first time since, I think, 2017. And it's not fun. I would take a cold over COVID, but I would take COVID over the flu. It's not a fun disease, and people do die from it, But I think with rest, that's the biggest thing, and hydration, most people have a really good shot of pulling through. But yeah, I don't take the flu shot, and I don't think you can trust that the flu shot still is the flu shot. Not medical advice, just my opinion. Somewhere in Kentucky says, got another train incident in Ohio. This is from Fox 19 Now. Residents in Whitewater Township started smelling an odor shortly before 1 p.m. That was on September 24th. That's when emergency crews started descending on the area and then prompted an evacuation order. So this was a chemical leak in Whitewater Township, Ohio. Authorities said it could be a long event, and it was a styrene, which is a toxic gas. They also added that, another train incident in Ohio. Everybody thought about or forgot about East Palestine, Ohio, it seems like. As much fun as it gets made of, the whole infrastructure week thing, that was an ongoing joke during the first Trump administration. When it comes to railroads, especially when conveying toxic material like that, you'd hope that this country would be serious about actually keeping up maintenance on railroads. But something's, especially in Ohio, that's a crossroads of the country right there, along with other Rust Belt states, Midwest Rust Belt states. Something's got to be done. I know that it's an ongoing joke that Infrastructure Week, but these are roads. These are transportation networks. That's kind of one of... You can debate with me if you have a more libertarian instinct, but I believe that's one of the ways that government can promote commerce, is making sure we have usable roadways and usable usable transportation infrastructure. It doesn't seem like we're getting that done. Tiny Johnny says or asks, well, what are the top lessons you hope the church learns from the Lawson debacle, the Stephen Lawson debacle? I think the number one lesson is that it's always better to err on the side of the Billy Graham rule than not. I think for some folks, it's another cautionary tale to make all of your heroes dead guys. And I think another lesson that can be learned is that for all of us, there but for the grace of God go I. That's another thing. And I think at some point, across denominations, even between Protestants and Catholics, at least for those in the ministry, it's time for radical accountability. Uncomfortable accountability, especially for those wearing the cloth, because it does damage the reputation of ministries. It does damage the reputation of the church. It doesn't damage the reputation of the gospel. Not at all. The gospel stands or falls on itself, and it stands by itself. But I think at the bare minimum, erring on the side of the Billy Graham rule is probably the biggest lesson that people could learn. And the more I've learned about, I think I've learned about the Stephen Lawson thing, and this is not, I don't think this is an internal issue for that church. Stephen Lawson was a very public figure involved in multiple ministries. So discussion, not gossip, but discussion about what happened there and demanding answers about what happened, I think that's appropriate for the broader world. Max Bag Limit says, with the Fever getting flushed out of the playoffs, the WNBA ratings will go right back into the tank. Yep. And there's an ESPN employee, a talking head on ESPN, who outright said last night, or maybe it was yesterday afternoon, he said that he hoped his network is covering WNBA games. It's the playoffs now. He said that he hopes Caitlin Clark fans tune out for the rest of the tournament. It's Caitlin Clark derangement syndrome. And I do think that people are going to tune out. There were some stats, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but it was like 2 or 3 times the number of people watched Caitlin Clark involved games than the rest of the league on average. She is the league right now. And man, there's a lot of coping and seething going on. Allison Linville asks, what are 3 pieces of advice you would share with young men freshly graduated from high school? What are 3 pieces of advice you would share with young women freshly graduated from high school? So 3 pieces of advice I would give both girls and boys, young men, young women who have just graduated high school. I think first and foremost, I'm coming at this from the standpoint that these individuals are already motivated to actually go and be as best as they can, productive members of society, that they are driven and motivated to find a spouse, to hold down a steady job, to pass on a better future for themselves and to their children. So I'm assuming that they're motivated like that. And I'm assuming that is where this question is coming from. I might be wrong about that assumption, but that's how I'm going to answer it. So coming with it from that standpoint, also a standpoint from the ultimate meaning and purpose in life comes from your relationship with Jesus and your faith. And so those are the prerequisites. Those are kind of the disclaimers that I'd give here. Number 1, I think this is for both young men and young women. It's really important as best as you possibly can to pursue experience, not necessarily a degree, in a field that you find enjoyable yet profitable. Enjoyable yet monetizable. So you kind of got to find that crux. And maybe that's just not available to you. But I think God gives you interests and abilities, monetizable so, in something that you can at least enjoy, or something that's a challenge to you, even if you don't enjoy it, that you can make money on. So that is the first thing that I would say. Pursue as much as you possibly can experience over a piece of paper. Because, outside of your faith, I think this is true for anybody, believer or unbeliever, Your vocation is, for the most part, going to be what gives you a sense of self-worth and self-esteem. God used my first job at a fast food joint to really increase my healthy self-esteem, what I thought of myself. I felt like I had put in an honest day's work for the first time. I've talked about that before in the past. So as much as you possibly can in a field that you are interested in, but is also monetizable, whatever that matrix is, pursue experience rather than a piece of paper. The number two thing that I would say is, as it's really tough these days, but also pursue being able to live responsibly independently. I think that is a huge barrier. For one reason or another, a lot of young men and to a lesser extent young women, but a lot of young men are very unmotivated to leave the house. You should be motivated to live independently. Shouldn't be motivated to get out from mom and dad's thumb, but you should be motivated to live independently. And sometimes mom and dad, you need to make sure that they are motivated to get out of your house, especially young men. Young women, I think it's a different story. But even young women, you can live independent. Make sure you're pursuing a way of living independently from mom and dad. Although if you need to stay in their house for a while, I think that's okay for young women. So that means being able to find a job, even if it's not what you want to do right now, as you're maybe pursuing something else, experience and something else off to the side. Being able to hold down a steady job means being able to live independently, which is really important for finding a spouse, which is number three. Again, I'm assuming that these young men and women want to have kind of a normal life. Most of us, the biggest calling in our life is going to be that of a spouse and hopefully parent. I'd say for the young men, just speaking from personal experience, the most growth that I've had in my life is areas when I was content, not content in the sense that I knew this is where God wanted me to be for the season that I was in. I had tried and I dated several young women, and it was just not a great experience, especially the last one that I dated before I met Bella. But it was after that one, I was just like, you know what? I'm actually kind of enjoying being single, and I'm okay if this is where God has me in this area of my life. I met Bella 3 months later. I'm not making that up. I met her 3 months after I came to the conclusion that, I'm okay if this is where God wants me at this portion of my life. So for the young men, if you are pursuing or trying to get on the dating scene and it's just not working out, you know what? Maybe it's time for you to come to grips with, I actually enjoy being single. This is good, and I'm okay with that if that's where God wants me to be in my life. I'm not going to completely turn my back on dating, but I'm okay if this is where God wants me. I'm not saying that this is a cosmic vending machine type of moment, but just in my own experience, I have other experiences like that in my life where it seems like God opens up doors for the next thing in my life the moment that I become content that this is where he wants me for now. So on that third piece of advice for young women, as you're looking for young men, standards versus expectations. I've given this talk before. Standards are things that you hold in your closed hand, okay? So standards are things, he's got to love Jesus. He's got to have high character, and hopefully he has high character if he says he loves Jesus. And, he can't be a slob, can't be a sloth, and that has to do with high character. Standards versus expectations. Standards are in your closed hands. Expectation is in your open hand. Expectation is how it looks from the outside looking in. Oh, he's got a tattoo. Oh, he's got long hair. Oh, he's got, he's got a 5 o'clock shadow constantly. He's not the best looking, his eyes are a little bit too far apart. You need to be physically attracted to a guy. But if he's checking the closed hand boxes, maybe give him a second look if the physical attraction piece isn't completely there. I'm not saying just disregard that, but maybe give him a second chance. The expectations are how you want things or think things should look from the outside looking in. Oh, he likes this particular version of music, and I thought my dream guy would like this kind of music. You get what I'm saying. don't try as much as you can not to look at the outward expectation you have for what the perfect God-fearing man looks like. Try to look at the heart and then reassess from there. So those are 3 pieces of advice that I would generally give young men or young women coming out of high school. Number 1, find a career that kind of joins at the matrix of something that you're interested in or challenged by that's also monetizable. Pursue experience over a piece of paper from a college. If you want to go to college, maybe go to community college first to get the prerequisites out as you're working, as you're kind of saving up money, things of that nature. Number 2, make sure you're pursuing independence. Even if you are a young lady, make sure you're able to function in the world outside of the protection of mom and dad. Hopefully that'll be under the protection of your husband someday. But, there's a danger for young women as well that, get a few years down the road and living with mom and dad, and all of a sudden you're not able to function without them. And that could become a problem in a marriage. And then for young men, make sure you're holding down a steady job so you can live independently. And then the third thing is, men, if you're pursuing women or you want to get married, you have that desire, but it's just not happening, don't give up, but maybe accept that this is where God wants you in life. Maybe that will change what God has in store for you. And young women, as you're looking for a partner, make sure you're looking as best as you can at their heart and not the outward appearance. Although outward appearance, as I said, is important, that shouldn't be the only thing you look at. So good question. I appreciate that. Shay and James Moon say, as a California resident, I recently received my general election information packet, and one of the first propositions listed is Prop 3, a constitutional amendment regarding marriage rights. Interesting. I did not know that was on the table in California. But that's good to know, Shay and James. Thank you. All right, we're running long here. Let's go to this. SA Cupcake says, did you know that back in 2022, the University of Rhode Island paid a porn star to teach students how to be porn stars? I'm surprised that's not an actual major now in colleges. So yeah, there's documentation that SA Cupcake provided that the University of Rhode Island actually did hire a porn star in 2022 to teach students how to become a porn star. Let's end with this. KM asks this question. What's your general opinion of Cernovich, general views and influence? He's not my cup of tea. There are a few things where he gets really, really right, and there are some things that he gets really, really wrong. And I think he might have a little bit of an inflated view of his influence in right-wing circles. He is not a Christian. He's quasi-spiritual, kind of faux spiritual. I think he did an ayahuasca trip at one point, which is for the super hippy-dippy, tech types. I don't even know how he made his money, or makes money for that matter. So he's not my cup of tea. Some people really dig him, but he's not my cup of tea. Monroe County Republican asks, what's your go-to sports app? I'm sorry, I'm just going to be really, okay. For American sports, it's ESPN. The app has gotten better. It's gotten more stable. So it's really easy to use as well. Now for soccer, it's Live Score. That is a great app for keeping track of soccer scores. So Live Score is the app for me for when it comes to soccer. So we went way long today, so we're going to leave it there. Thank you for all of your submissions to Ask or Tell Me Anything. Appreciate each and every one of you. We'll be back at it again tomorrow for No Suck Saturday. Bella and I will be back with 5 stories that objectively don't suck. For the rest of you, though, non-Apple Podcasts premium subscribers, we'll be back at it again on Monday. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.